joining us in this episode of Factually Speaking to discuss this very important subject, dementia, Professor Vaughan James and Rihanna Patterson. Who are these people, you say? Well, let me tell you something about the two of them, beginning with
Go ahead,
Rihanna.
Dan.
Rihanna Patterson is the founder of the Dominica Dementia Foundation, which she founded at the age of 18 in memory of her grandfather who had dementia in Dominica. Rihanna has been a voice for older people in forums such as the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. She was one of the principal authors and researchers on dementia in the Commonwealth report that was launched by the Commonwealth Aging Association, Common Age, at the International Dementia Conference in Australia. Rihanna has a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Kent and completed a master's degree in dementia at the University College London, UCL, where her thesis focused on dementia policies in Caribbean communities. Dr. Vaughan E. James is the Judge Robert H. Bean Professor at Texas Tech University School of Law in Lubbock, Texas, where, among other courses, he teaches elder law and wills and trusts probate. His books include The Alzheimer's Advisor, A Caregiver's Guide to Dealing with the Tough Legal and Practical Issues. And now, before we begin to hear from these, well-informed persons on the topic of dementia, what is dementia? Dementia is a general term for a decline in cognitive function that is severe enough to interfere with daily life. It affects memory, thinking, and social abilities. And while it's often associated with aging, dementia is not a normal part of aging. Various types of dementia include Alzheimer's disease, and that's the most common type. There's vascular dementia, there's Lewy body dementia, frontotemporal dementia, mixed dementia, among other types. And each type has distinct characteristics and symptoms, and understanding these differences is crucial for diagnosis and treatment. So, what are some of the characteristics and symptoms of dementia? Well, according to Dr. James, his sister had dementia, and one of the early symptoms was forgetfulness, which worsened over time.
She would forget whether she even had breakfast. And at that point, I told her, "Ma, you know something, you really should go see your doctor and find out whether you're coming down with Alzheimer's disease, because I don't like what I see happening with you." And she said, "Okay." And she went. And then she called me. It was May 12, 2015, my birthday. When my mother called, I was at my office, and she said, "The doctor told me I'm in stage 1 Alzheimer's disease." I said, "Ouch." I was correct in thinking she had Alzheimer's disease because of just her forgetfulness. So that's one big thing. The person begins to forget, especially things that just happened. It's okay if we forget things that happened a long time ago, gee whiz. But to forget things that happened a few minutes ago, an hour ago, that's a classic symbol. Going back to my sister, with she having vascular dementia, and we were going to court one day to work out the guardianship for one of her daughters. And I gave her a copy of the filing that I had presented to the court. I said, "That's your copy." We drove a mile, and she said, "So, Shaggy, is this mine, or is that going to the court?" I said, "No, it's yours. It's yours for you to keep. I have already filed the papers in court." We drove maybe half a mile. She said, "So Jackie, this thing I'm in my hand, is that for me, or is that to give to the court?" I said, No, it's all yours." Another half mile, she asked the same question. At that point, I say, "I tell you what, I think you're kind of getting tired now. You want to go home to rest?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, I'll take you back home." I turned the car around, took her home. I still had vision back then, okay? So I was driving, and took her back home and went to court by myself. It was obvious to me something was wrong with her. So these are the things you find happening. Another thing that happens is they wander. I mean, leave home and go wandering. My brother has now set up lots of cameras around the house in Poughkeepsie, New York, where my mother lives with my brother, just as I have lots of cameras here for a different reason. But there are lots of cameras. And one of those mornings, he was quite disturbed. My mother had woken up at 3 o'clock, gotten dressed, and left the house. And of course, the alarm went off, so he chased her down. She said, I'm just going to see my mother and father in Solihull. Why are you detaining me? This is Poughkeepsie, New York, okay? And she wants to go to Solihull to see her mother and father. Obviously, something's wrong with her. There's this wandering thing that they do. And so if you're not careful, they get lost. And so you have to start to think of putting these locks on the door, having an alarm, having cameras, doing everything to prevent your loved ones from wandering all around town. One lady here in Lubbock, she went wandering, was missing all weekend. I mean, the police were looking for her. There were helicopters in the air trying to find the lady. She was eventually found by the McDonald's on 50th Street and I-27. She was found there, a bottle of water in her hand. Where's she going to? She's going home to Point Michelle, she said. She's from Point Michelle, Dominica. She was going to Point Michelle. This is Lubbock, Texas. You see things like that happen, you realize something's wrong. The person has some type of dementia. We don't know what type yet, but we better get to a doctor who can do a diagnosis of some sort.
Mm-hmm. And that it can be diagnosed, right? I mean, scientifically, huh? Or medically? Medically.
As of now, with 95% certainty, we've come a long way, huh? 95%.
Yeah, well, with Alzheimer's, there is might call a test. It's a cognitive test which the doctors give you. They would ask you to do things like draw a clock. You know, you could all draw a clock easily. It's a wrong thing, and there are 12 divisions in the clock. And the person who is suffering from Alzheimer's will have a great difficulty in drawing the clock face, for example. That's one of the tests, and I think the maximum score is 30. You score 30, you're okay, and lower down the scale you are, the worse off you are. So there are these tests which the psychologist or the doctor can perform on the potential client to determine whether he is or she is suffering from Alzheimer's or just beginning to, or what stage the person is. Yeah.
Okay, I want to get back to Rihanna to share with us her experience, in terms of the symptoms, what signs that made her become aware that she said, I think one of your relatives was suffering from Alzheimer's, right? Was it your dad? Your dad?
My granddad.
Your granddad?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, because I asked a question, and I guess I need some elucidation for myself, because I was of the impression that Alzheimer's is not dementia, but Alzheimer's can lead to dementia. Is that a correct?
No, I think it's a form of dementia.
It's a form of dementia.
Dementia, oh yes.
Oh, okay.
There are other forms.
It's okay. All right.
So everybody who is demented isn't suffering from Alzheimer's.
All right. Okay. All right. But Alzheimer's is a form of dementia. Okay.
And it's the most prevalent form.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So we're most familiar with it.
Yes.
You said that, and there's one lady I was speaking to who said, well, her loved one doesn't have Alzheimer's. He has dementia. I said, okay. Mom, let me explain to you. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia.
Okay, great.
For some reason, she was all negative about Alzheimer's. A lot of her dementia, not Alzheimer's.
Right.
It's just a type of dementia.
Okay, great. That's it's really cleared the air for me. Okay, now Rihanna, with your experience and your granddad, Professor James was telling us what he experienced with his sister in terms of the symptoms that he noticed, the signs. What about you? What can you share with us about your experience?
Yes, so my grandfather, the type of dementia he had was actually Parkinson's disease dementia, which affects mobility. So it kind of slowed down his mobility. So he forgot how to walk. He lost weight because he wasn't eating that much. And he was driving, and he had to stop driving because of the visuospatial difficulties I believe he was experiencing on the road. Because sometimes, like, for example, a black carpet can look like a black hole to someone who's experiencing dementia, because they're not able to process that is a carpet and not a hole. So, processing colors becomes a bit different for them. So I think that is probably one of the reasons he was having difficulties on the road. And then also, when someone has dementia, it is very vital that they stop driving because of these symptoms. So that is one thing as well. There's also delusions and hallucinations, primarily with Parkinson's disease. A lot of visual hallucinations can occur, but for him, it was a special case where he was having the illusion that there was running water in the house, which is normal, which happens in the Caribbean. But it came to a point like he was consistently talking about this running water. We'd go and check, and there's nothing there. So that was already one sign. And then the driving difficulties was the other sign for us, which was a major one because he's never had an accident before. He hasn't had one. But there was a situation where he was ruminating on a driving experience, like while he was driving. And that one was the major, we need to go check something just to make sure that he's okay. And it kind of just went downhill from there. And then he, forgot himself. He forgot me. He forgot the family. So it was very progressive. This thing happened in a matter of months. So that was kind of like my experience and the kind of symptoms that was coming out from his journey.
But I haven't heard.
Just to note there that with Parkinson's disease, the person usually starts off by shaking, inability to stop
there's shakes
shaking.
as well.
That's probably how it starts, and then the progression of that. Somewhere along the progression, the dementia itself kicks in.
Yes, and he also experienced stiffness, like muscle stiffness. Like he had difficulty moving his hands and so on. There was a bit of shakiness, but also, yes, with Parkinson's disease, I think it's when the person is using their hands, it's still. But if it's just by itself, like just doing nothing, it shakes. So that is also, one of the factors in terms of Parkinson's disease dementia.
And it can progress to the stage where it not only affects their hands, their head, the entire body, Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we have examined it. There's one thing though. I mean, people have heard talk about their relatives. Fortunately for me, I have not had a relative, immediate family member so far who has suffered from any of those diseases. But I've heard people talk about their relatives, and I've seen, some of them who actually are suffering, from dementia. And one of the symptoms I have, heard about and seen is sometimes they tend to get very emotional, right? In other words, they will get upset over, things that normally would not upset. For example, they might want to go across the road to visit a neighbor, and for some reason they can't go. You say to them, well, okay, it's raining, you can't go. And they burst out emotionally into tears, and, they get angry, that kind of thing. I haven't heard any of you one of you talk about that.
Yes, so agitation is definitely a symptom. This also happens in like what was he, a boxer, was it Muhammad? He had Parkinson's disease, dementia, and with that there are frustrations, agitations. It is certainly a symptom that we see.
And some of those we'll get to the point where we talk about how the carers, because I'm pretty sure in the Dominica Dementia Foundation this is one of the things you perhaps had to focus on in your training, for carers, because you are dealing with somebody who can behave irrationally sometimes, and you have to be mindful, because in many cases, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are so uninformed about the disease that we're not aware that those people are in fact, developing that condition, and we treat them as if they were normal, and we because of that, their behavior tends to get us frustrated, and annoyed, and so on. Let's talk a bit about that.
Yes, certainly.
Yes, Tim, let's deal with this, right? Because
Mhm.
people not understanding the disease, they get very angry about the people suffering from one of the various types of dementias. And sometimes bad things happen. Okay. One of the biggest cases I've had as a lawyer was I was admitted pro hac vice to do this case in California. It was the facts were terrible. The man hired an agency to care for his wife who had Alzheimer's disease. And the agency sent this worker, and the worker was doing the dishes when out of nowhere, the Alzheimer's patient just grabbed a knife and attacked the woman, severely damaged her hand. She can't use her hands again. And so the lady, of course, she wants compensation for having been injured in this way. Working for an agency, of course, she's entitled to workman's comp, but then she sued the man and his wife. And the lawyers in California heard about me, called me up, said, "Will you help us?" So I took the case, and I won. I won. And my argument was that it's really not fair to have to hold someone liable when the person doesn't have a cognitive ability. And the court agreed with me. You really can't hold this lady accountable. The case went all the way to the California Supreme Court, and that, again, the Alzheimer's patient won. It's because people do not understand. The lady, I guess, must have been thinking, well, you injured me, so you should pay. But the lady doesn't know. At the same time, I can understand, gee, the woman now can't use her right hand anymore because she was, quote unquote, attacked by someone with Alzheimer's disease. How do we deal with these situations is a difficult thing. We also face the whole matter about, Rihanna spoke about driving and taking the keys away from the people with Alzheimer's disease. They get pretty annoyed when you tell them they cannot drive anymore, because to them you're taking something that they're entitled to do. Now, I don't drive anymore, right? It would be crazy if I were driving. But I can understand that. I know what's going on, why I cannot drive anymore. But with the person with Alzheimer's or Huntington's or vascular dementia, they don't understand that, and they get very, very annoyed. They get angry very quickly over strange things. One of my uncles who died from complications from Alzheimer's, we were very close. And every morning we'd sit down for breakfast and we would talk and say, "Shakes, you having a good day today?" "Yeah." "Okay, Shakes, well, you take care." And then I'd take off to the university. And I'd come back and he would stare at me and he would call me some name. I won't say what name it is. He'd call me somebody's name and tell me, "Get out of his house. I don't want you anywhere in my house." At that point, I'd leave and I'd go to my apartment, which was at the back of the house. But every night he became a different person who basically chased me away. Rihanna spoke of Muhammad Ali. I went to school at Andrews University in Michigan. The big farm right next to Andrews was owned by Muhammad Ali. And we used to go there to see him. It was such fun, speaking to Muhammad Ali, very nice fellow. He loved ice cream. But then when the Parkinson's hit, his hands used to shake a lot. And he became really like a baby. He wasn't the violent type of Parkinson's person. He was more like a baby. Still loved ice cream, but it was a completely different Muhammad Ali. It's amazing what these diseases do to people.
Rihanna, in the case of Dominica, though, where, I mean, what Professor James and yourself spoke about, in terms of the behavior, well, especially Professor James, the way people react to those who are afflicted, by this disease. In the United States, I mean, I would imagine there's a lot more information on those conditions. And therefore people are more aware. I mean, although not everybody, I guess, would be well informed, but generally there's more information. But in Dominica, we're just, and thanks to you and the Dominica Dementia Foundation, there's more awareness now. Awareness is growing, but even so, there's still a lot, to learn. I mean, the population overall, is not sufficiently informed about dementia, because I come across people from time to time who have relatives who appear to be suffering from dementia, but who do not know, anything about the disease, and they may not even know that it is dementia,
Mm.
So in terms of the Dominican context, how is the association? I'm pretty sure you come across those cases on a regular basis. I mean, what are you doing to assist people to be able, first of all, to identify cases of dementia and to be able to cope with those cases?
Yeah, so most cases we do ask if there is a diagnosis formally. If not, we do suggest that they get a diagnosis formally, and from there they can tailor the care plan and pathways that they wish to go to. So that is the first thing that we suggest. And then we also, it depends on the family dynamic as well, because people come to us for different things. Sometimes it's, they can't afford a carer, or they are looking to go to that next stage in terms of transitioning their families into a care home, and they're looking for the right care home. So then they go kind of like care home shopping and go to each care home, see the staff, talk to the owners, see how they engage with people there. It's quite important to make sure that their family member is getting the best level of care. So that is also something as well. We've also seen families who balance the caregiving between themselves. So the person will be by the auntie for a couple of hours, and then maybe by one of their children, and so on. It's sometimes it's not the best approach, but cost effective and time wise, sometimes that's all the families can afford to do in that situation. So we have seen people kind of sharing the care, giving responsibilities, and I guess in that way, it also supports the carers as well, because the person is not taking care of them for the entire day. They only have fractions of different intervals, and then they share it around the family members. So we've seen, different things through our engagements with families across Dominica.
But I wanted to ask Rihanna, in the Dominican context, what it is that, apart from the assistance you give, with regard to the areas that you mentioned, people coming to you with specific situations, where you assist the best that you can. But in terms of the programs, in terms of the information that you try to put out there to get the population more aware of what is going on and how to deal with dementia. What do you do? Do you have radio programs? Do you use the media? Do you hold sessions for caregivers, for regular families? How do you do that?
Yeah, so we have a Dominica Dementia Friends program. So Dementia Friends was primarily introduced by Alzheimer's Society UK, based in England. And it's primarily a program where people can come and get, very much grassroots level knowledge on what dementia is and how they can move forward. So we have implemented that program and tailored it to the Dominican community. So we offer that, and that's free. So people can just sign up to join. And then it's about, I think, a half an hour session that we do virtually. We can do it in person with the person. And that gives them the knowledge necessary, just beginner level, to understand what it is to that extent.
And how are
And that
people
covers.
responding to that?
Yes, it's been good. Over the years, we've had facilitators join us, so we've trained them, so train the trainer to become a dementia friend facilitator in the community. We've also trained a few people in the care homes here, as well as students as well, to just increase the knowledge of dementia in various communities. So we've done that. We also, as everyone, have access to various research, so we share that. We attend conferences and contribute to dementia in the Caribbean areas to further disseminate that to the wider public and people of Caribbean descent. So we do that as well. And then, yeah, if families ask for specific information on dementia, we also do our best to share the resources we have on that as well.
Okay, and finally, on the Dominica aspect of the topic, Do you have any statistics on the prevalence of the disease in Dominica?
Yes, so I mean, at this point, we have a research that came out by the Lancet in 2019, which said that Dominica had 574 people living with dementia, and that was expected to rise by 1999 in 2050. And although it sounds like a small amount, because we are already a small population, it is a concern. And we are an aging population, Dominica. We have, quite a few centenarians here as well. And the goal is to age well and live well. So, if we have that certain amount of people living with dementia and it is expected to rise, it is a concern. But that is what we have so far. We also have, organizations like Alzheimer's Disease International who share reports annually on this, and they try to get information from us, but we can only do as much as we can. It's normally good when things are on a national scale. So like I was mentioning before, the national census, but I don't think there's been a census recently. So I don't know exactly if there's anything else recently that I can provide, but that is what I have of recent, the Lancet one.
Okay, thank you, Rihanna. Another reminder to our viewers that you're watching Factually Speaking, a DNO podcast, and in this edition, we are focusing on the topic of dementia, and to help us do that, Professor Vaughan James and Rihanna Patterson. And we're now going to move into that aspect, the aspect of the program that deals specifically with dementia and the law. And let's go across now to co-host Mark Marie, who has the first question.
Yeah, well, what I wanted to ask Dr. James there, Professor James, is at what point in time in the progress of the disease do you advise that the person make arrangements for his affairs to be taken over by some other person? One, and an ally to that is in the Dominica situation, given our laws, what is the best legal document that would effectively transfer the person's responsibilities for life, if you like, to some other person?
Okay, I like that question. It's a very long answer. To begin with, as to when someone should start getting ready, I tell all my students the day after graduation, start getting ready. People who take my wills and trust class graduate with their own last will and testament. If you take my class, you do your last will and testament before the end of the semester, because I believe no matter what you have, you can go ahead and execute a last will and testament. So I urge everybody, get a last will and testament. I know you say, I don't want to pay a lawyer. Well, you know what? You could, well, here in Texas, at least, you could write your own will by hand. It's called a holographic will. But I guess in Dominica, it needs to be typed. I don't know Dominica's law. But if it is the type, spend the money, get a lawyer, get a last will and testament. Each and every person should have that. That's number one instrument. Then you need a durable power of attorney. And before I talk about that, though, we have to think of the laws in Dominica changing to allow people to do things like that. We didn't have these in America until we had the Nancy Crujan case, a young lady who got into an accident and was just in a vegetative state until she eventually died because the law didn't provide at the time for her to say what to do with her should that ever happen to her. Today, things have changed, right? If I share, I'm heading to the hospital in Florida this coming Sunday. The hospital called me yesterday to ask for my medical power of attorney and my living will. My medical power of attorney says if I cannot make my decisions, my son E10 will make them for me. My living will says if I'm in a vegetative state, pull the plug. Don't waste money keeping me alive saying, we love Shaky, we don't have, no. Pull the plug, end the matter, okay? But the hospital called to ask for these things and I sent them down, uploaded them. The hospital has them by now. When I show up next week, they'll know, right? people need these kind of things. You need, first of all, the durable power of attorney, which will tell you who would be in charge of your property, your money, etc., should something happen to you. And again, do this as soon as possible. When we finish the program, if you don't have them, go do them. And then the medical power of attorney says, who will take care of your medical questions? Who will decide what you get in terms of medical treatment? I'll share with you, mine is pretty clear. I do not want any pig products. When the doctors told me several years ago, when I was a 35-year-old kid, the doctors told me that I needed to get pig valves, okay? And I said, Doc, you're missing out something. If you check my chart, it says I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I don't eat pigs. I don't play with pigs. In fact, if I'm walking down the street and I see a pig coming, I'll cross the street so the pig doesn't even breathe on me. The doctor laughed and said, but if you don't get this, you have 5 more years to live. And I said, thank you, doctor. There's a book I read that says the dead in Christ shall be the first to rise. And then you who are alive will be caught up to meet us in the air. So I guess I'll be going before you. That's okay, doc. And the doctor shook her head and said, you're one crazy man. I was 35 years old at the time. I survived. I'm not dead yet, right? I was supposed to die at 40. I'm over 40, you can tell that. But everybody needs that kind of instrument saying, here's what I want, here's what I won't take. I'd rather die than have pig valves in my chest, for example. That's how serious I am about what I believe. People need these kind of instruments. There's something else that we call the living will, that says pull the plug or not pull the plug. And there's a do not resuscitate order. The do not resuscitate order says, if I'm dead, you find me dead, leave me, well, it says either leave me dead or don't leave me dead. Mine says, leave me dead. If you come upon me and I'm sitting in my car and it's obvious I am dead, I have no pulse, don't break my ribs to bring me back to life. Don't shock my body. Just say, bye, Shakes. Nice having you around, and let me go, right? So these are instruments that people need to think about seriously in the legal term. But what I've been advocating for a lot at these conferences, I tell you, I attend every 2 years, is for pre-need guardianship. I understand in Dominica it's called receivership instead of guardianship. But basically it's the same thing. It says,
yes, we have guardianship in Dominica.
Yes, you have guardianship. You don't call them receivership, they call guardianship?
Yes.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. So it says, look, if Mark cannot take care of himself, he hereby appoints Ophelia to make all his decisions for him. And that's great. You know, that's wonderful. Tim, you can do the same thing, right? Rihanna can, we all can do the same thing. What I'm advocating for is that we should be able to do the pre-need, not wait, don't wait until you've lost capacity and then people go to court and say, I should be the guardian because I'm the eldest son. I should be the guardian of the nicest daughter. No. Why not let me decide for myself who I want to be my guardian? I've already made my decision. It's already written down, you know. Should I lose capacity? Should I ever come down with dementia or anything whatsoever? My son E10 will be my guardian. End of story. If E10 dies before me or he cannot do it or doesn't want to do it, my daughter Meili will do it, you know. That's the kind of things I'm advocating for, and I encourage people to do as soon as we have the legislation that can get these things done. And Mark, I'm happy to hear Dominica has guardianships. I do not know if Dominica has pre-need guardianships. Here in the United States, only Texas and Florida allow us to do pre-need guardianships. The other states have not caught on to it yet. I'm happy I'm in Texas, so I have my pre-need guardianship done already.
Mm-hmm. Let me just ask a follow-up question quickly. There is the medical power of attorney, which you have spoken about. You know, you mentioned in some notes, and the durable power of attorney. What is the difference between the two?
Okay, the durable power of attorney deals with property, your money, your land, your cars, whatever else. This person will be in charge of my property. You may or may not give the person power to give gifts. I advocate no, don't give people power to make gifts from your money, but basically that's property. Medical power of attorney deal with medical decisions. Who would decide, do you get this procedure or not? You know? And again, I like to use examples. Take myself as an example. I'm going to the hospital. We're supposed to have a double corneal transplant surgery. And Should something happen to me, I lose my son E10 will decide, do I get the surgery or not? Whatever he says is fine because he has the power, right? You give that power to somebody. The thing is, when you choose the agent, choose somebody who knows you, whom you trust, and somebody who knows just what you believe. It would be terrible for me to have someone who is my medical power of attorney who decides, oh, yeah, open up his chairs, give him the pig valves. Gee, that's bad stuff for me, Now, you might say that's cool with you. That's all right, I just believe differently. And so my son, who knows what I believe, who believes the same thing I believe, he will be able to decide, no pig valves for him. And so that's the medical power. The other one, durable power.
Okay. Mark, you were about to say something before I interjected?
No.
Oh.
That's well. Maybe just to make a comment there that generally, people who are suffering from Alzheimer's usually don't have any such thing in place before they become incapacitated. So the question that comes up here, also legal question really, is can somebody else, a member of the family, for example, apply for have a guardianship over the person who is, might say, incapacitated, unable to take care of his own affairs?
Yes. A family member could then say, what I like to see happen is that the family gets together and they decide on who should be the guardian, and then that person would apply for guardianship. Instead of the family fighting, which unfortunately happens too often, you have big brother wanting it, big sister wanting it, uncle saying I should be it, granny saying no, I should be it, and the family is fighting. And those cases go to court, and the lawyers get wealthy, and nothing's done for the person who has Alzheimer's disease, right? So the family should get together and make a decision. And that's why I'm advocating for this pre-need guardianship, because the pre-need would enable, say, me to decide who I want and have that done and written. So after I lose my capacity, people are not fighting over it. But this happens a lot, the whole fights, and that just drags things out. But a short answer to your question is yes, some relatives can go to court. Here in Texas, we have a real strange law. For all my Texans listening to me will agree with me, I'm sure, that anybody could apply for guardianship over somebody else. You got that? Anybody. You do not have to be related. Somebody doesn't have capacity, you see them on the street, you say, I will want guardianship over that person. I don't like that, right? I don't like that at all, because you have strangers becoming guardians of others. In Texas, we also have professional guardians, people whose job it is to become guardians. They do that for a living, of course, for a fee, right? I like to think of guardianship as a family thing, of a loving family member taking care of a member that they love. But that's just me,
Okay. Well, Mark, do you have any more questions?
No, that's okay. It for now. Yeah.
Well, yeah, we've come to the point where I want to thank Rihanna and Dr. James, Professor James. But before we leave, though, I would want to give you, both of you, the opportunity to make a final statement, to cover any, thing that you'd like to say, about the topic. Before we leave, anything, any statement that you'd like to make, any closing statement?
I would just say dementia is not the end. People can live with dementia, live well with it, as well as they can. So it's just about managing it and just making sure that they're living life to the fullest, that it doesn't end there. So I would say that, and enjoy them while they are here. Still make memories with them, still talk to them, still treat them as a productive family member, a productive member in society. We need to give them that dignity that they deserve after years of contributing to the society and the family. So I would say that. And then just making sure that we're talking realistically, but also positively about dementia. So using the word suffering is helpful. So saying, living with dementia or experiencing dementia can also help people to curb the stigma of dementia, because a lot of people think when that person has dementia, they're suffering, they're in pain. And sometimes that is true. And then there's other times they're not in pain and they're living as well as they can. So just bearing that in mind as well.
Thank you, Rihanna. Professor James.
For my part, I remember right now the words of Nancy Reagan, wife of the late President Ronald Reagan. As no doubt know, he suffered from Alzheimer's disease and before he died. And Nancy Reagan called it the long goodbye. And that is really what it is. It's the long goodbye. Someone diagnosed with Alzheimer's or vascular dementia or some type of dementia, a neurodegenerative disease, typically has about 20 more years to live. Most times less than that. My sister made it to 11. There are others I know who don't live that long. As they get in the last stages, they lose the ability to speak. They lose the ability to do anything for themselves. And one of the questions that came up in court one day, I was at court in Dutchess County, Supreme Court in New York. The question was, is there anything going on in there? Because the client/patient couldn't say a word, right? She was just sitting there. And at some point in the proceedings, we heard this loud sound, which signaled to us that she was, and we knew that, suffering from incontinence, and it was time to take a break, to take her to the bathroom, right? That was a relatively young lady. She wasn't even 60 years old yet. That's what I'm talking about. But it's the long goodbye. And I feel the pain of not just the people with the disease, but the family members who have lost someone, because the person is there, they're alive, they're breathing, they're eating, but they cannot say much. In fact, in that one lady, she couldn't say one word. They cannot do much. People have to do everything for them. There's one professor in Ohio who told me that if she ever comes to the point where she suffers from a neurodegenerative disease, she's taking the next plane to Holland, booking into a hotel with her pills, and she'll end it all because suicide is quite legal in Holland, right? And she says, yeah, and I was kind of taken aback by that, but I can understand. She doesn't want to go through what she sees her clients going through, and the loved ones or the clients who come to her going through that. She doesn't want to go through that herself. So how do we deal with this is the question. And I think the first thing we need really, even in the Dominican context, is to educate the population on dementia, what it is, what it causes, what happens. And that's why when I met with the executive of the Dementia Foundation just last month, I offered them that I would come back to Dominica this summer to do a series of workshops free of charge to everybody. I hope they can do it free of charge. But my foundation will pay my expenses. Trem wouldn't charge me anything. I'm an endowed professor. I have an endowment that covers my expenses when I do things. And I said I will come at the expense of my endowment and do these workshops. Whereupon the president, Miss Nicholas is her name, and she said, well, listen, we can do two sets of workshops, one for adults, one for young people. And I like the idea of young people because we need to educate the caregivers. My sister runs an agency in Waldorf, Maryland, and every year she comes to speak at my elder law class on caring for the caregivers. Because if you do not take good care of yourself as a caregiver, you know what? You'll end up in the same place that your patient is, because this is a terrible job. It runs you down. In New York, where I also practice law, we have these agencies that they'll send a team of caregivers, 3 people, each one doing an 8-hour shift. Now imagine if you're taking care of your mom 24/7. That's not cool. That's hard. You have no other life, right? But if you can't afford the agency to send 3 different people, you stop with taking care of your own mom. So we need to talk to the young people who are going to be caregivers. Let's learn how to take care of, well, I'm going to say ourselves, so we can take care of our loved ones. There's so much more I could say, but I guess I've talked enough, so I'm gonna get quiet at this point.
Yeah, somehow something tells me this may not be the last program that we do on dementia, right? So I'm giving notice to both you and Rihanna that we'll probably be coming back to you sometime in the future. Okay, but we want
I'll
to
be
thank
happy to come back.
yeah, we want to thank both of you. Thank you very much, Rihanna Patterson and Professor Vaughan Shaky James, for being our guests on this very interesting and important program. We want to remind our viewers that the Factually Speaking podcast is something which we do for you, on a regular basis. And this must be, I think, the ninth program, the eighth or ninth program. And there are others, and on the DNO YouTube channel. You can go there to watch them, as well as on our Facebook page and on the DNO website itself. So until next time, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.